Hallo, was ist los, Lands Joker hier? Heute werden wir einen Blick auf Wolfenstein The Old Blood. Sprechen Deutsch? Whoa, 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 guys, don't click the dislike button yet. Nine. No, I'm not going to be doing the whole video in German, I assure you. But as I said there, we are going to be taking a look at Wolfenstein The Old Blood, which was released yesterday, May the 5th, for the PC, Xbox One, and PS4. This game is basically serving as a prequel to The New Order, which came out last year, which was a fantastic game. Beloved franchise of mine as I grew up playing it. I've talked about this in the past. And it made it into my top 5 games for 2014. It was that good. It was actually number 2 on my list, right behind Divinity Original Sin, if I remember correctly. It was a great game. It had a fantastic soundtrack, and even though it was just a single-player game, you know, we had a really good story to help fill that all in, so it didn't feel like anything was missing out of the single-player with The New Order. Like, that game was 10 out of 10 IGN all day long. Would play again, and I did play again. That game was just great. It hit all the bases that I wanted in a good single-player title. It was about 15 to 20 hours in length, but it could be longer depending on how much of a completionist you are. So when I heard that Machine Games and Bethesda were going to be putting out The Old Blood as a standalone for $20, I was curious to see what they were going to do. If it was just going to be kind of like a DLC or an expansion pack, or if it would be able to stand on its own feet as its own separate thing. But it is a prequel. It's the events leading up right to about 7 hours before the events of where the New Order picks up. So, you know, you don't have to play the New Order to have to play this. You can definitely play this and then the New Order if you want to, but the New Order right now is only $13 on G2A, and I can tell you that the New Order is better than this, but that was a $60 game. It's definitely got a more fleshed out story and more character development in there, but that's not to say that this is bad at all, and we'll touch on all of that in a minute. But first, I want to go ahead and jump in and take a look at the options menu, just like I always like to do for my PC reviews. But if you're not interested in seeing this sort of thing, I understand. And if you want to skip ahead, I'll put a timestamp below and the minute marker on the video here to where you could see me talking about all of the gameplay elements. Here we are now in the menus for Wolfenstein The Old Blood. Let's go ahead and jump into the options. Under gameplay here, you can see they have up to 5 different difficulties. You can start at Can I Play Daddy, Don't Hurt Me, Bring 'Em On, I Am Death Incarnate, and finally Uba, which is the hardest of the difficulties. I chose to play through on I Am Death Incarnate, which I found appropriately difficult. Some parts were definitely more difficult than others. Final boss battle wasn't too bad, but there was just some areas where there was just endless waves of enemies, seemingly, because I wasn't taking out the commanders, which is my own fault for not taking out the commanders stealthily. But some of those areas got really difficult for me on I Am Death Incarnate, so definitely, you know, a lot of different difficulties there for varying degrees of skill, and I look forward to going back at some point in the future and playing through on Uber, because the game was that good. Coming over to the controls, we have your key bindings, which are fully remappable, so nice to see that they got that in here, obviously. Got controller options as well, nothing too crazy, but, you know, if you're using a controller for a first-person shooter on the PC, then yeah, I don't know. Controller enable, which I'm not using. Mouse sensitivity you can adjust. Mouse smoothing, which is off by default. Nice to see that. Finally, they have the ability to toggle aim, which is good. I don't like to toggle aim, and it's nice that they have the option in there for you if you do want to toggle aim. Finally, toggle sprint and toggle crouch, both features which I do prefer to use personally. Coming over to audio options, we do have the ability to swap between different audio devices on the fly from in the menu system. That is good to see. We've got your master and voice volume here. Music can disable it. No slider for the music, which was kind of disappointing to not just be able to raise and lower the music volume. And then subtitles, you could do all foreign only or just completely off. And I chose to put it on just for all of it. I would have liked to seen, you know, different options here for different types of audio devices. Would have been nice to see that, as I've mentioned in previous videos, for headphones, surround, you know, different types of configurations, because it does change how the game actually does sound depending on what you're listening through. Coming over to video options, all right, display mode, full screen, monitor, resolution, supports all the way up to 4K, obviously. VSync you can run off, but it's really not going to matter because the game is capped at 60 frames. That's just really no way around that. It was the same way in the New Order, and as well as in the game Rage, which was on the same engine, the id Tech 5 engine. This particular engine, it does not support SLI. It is capped at 60 frames per second. It's not the greatest thing in the world, but it's something I'm actually willing to put up with for this particular game because it is so good. For Wolfenstein The New Order and The Old Blood, that is. For both games, I'm willing to put up with it because the games are that good. And if it was any other game, I probably wouldn't put up with it. I was like, oh, it's capped at 60 FPS. It's a first-person shooter. Not going to play it. Doesn't support SLI. Not going to play it. But for Wolfenstein, I will put up with it because the game speaks for itself, and it is just that damn good. Coming down, we have FOV. Very nice to see in increments of 5 going all the way up to 100. I would like to see that go a little bit higher. I know some people that like to play all the way up at 120, which is a little bit fisheye for me, but I prefer 90. But it's good that it's here, but 100 seems a little bit low. It'd be nice to see if that went all the way up to 120. It only goes down to 80. Some people I know like to even play lower than that, so only about a 20-degree difference here, not a tremendous amount. Would like to see a little bit more variation on that, but at least it is there. Now let's come over into the advanced options, the good stuff. And there are a decent number of advanced options for you to fiddle around with to get the game optimized to run on your system appropriately. And you should be able to run this game at 60 frames, I think, on most configurations, since the consoles are both running it at 60 FPS. Graphics quality, I've gone with a custom configuration, mostly ultra. I do have anti-aliasing off. This, I don't know what sort of anti-aliasing this is. It doesn't tell you. It just says 2 times 4 times 8, 16, and 32. And I will tell you, if you try to run 32 times anti-aliasing, your frame rate will drop dramatically. I ran this completely off on the anti-aliasing because I am playing at 1440p and because I have an AA injector with my SweetFX profile, so I didn't really need the in-game anti-aliasing. And even with 2 times and 4 times, I was noticing my frames dropping in some areas just because it was taxing out the VRAM so hard playing at 1440p, and because this game is demanding, and you have to remember it's not supporting SLI, so I'm only playing with only 1980, so it's, you know, but it ran very well for me like this. Running on these settings, it did not drop off of 60 frames for me at all. Virtual texture cache size, running that up at ultra. Virtual texture compression, this is something you would turn on if you wanted to get better performance. It's not necessarily, it doesn't make the game look better, it's going to make it look a little bit worse, if anything. But you are going to get better performance if you choose to put that on. So you don't want to go in here and just turn on everything. You want to sort of read through these and see what they are. And they do a good job of explaining down below what each one of them does. Over here you have virtual texture max PPFF, so this is your streaming limits in page per frame. So you can do this all the way up to 64 and all the way down to 16. I chose a nice middle ground of 32 because that was what gave me the best performance. Putting up at 64 taxed the VRAM a little bit more, and as a result I got some frame drops in certain larger areas that had a lot of texture detail. Virtual texture filtering, this is the highest it goes. They don't have this like all the way up to 16 times like you see in most games. It's just bilinear or trilinear, and that's pretty much it. Anisotropic here also it just goes up to high, low, medium, high. It doesn't have a 16 times like you would see in anisotropic filtering settings. Virtual texture LOD bias, you could turn this all the way up. It is going to make the game look a little bit better, but it's going to be harder to run. I didn't have any problems though on a single 980. Virtual texture page fade, again, this is one of those options where you don't really want to put it on unless your game is getting taxed and you need to sort of save some video memory somewhere, so you can disable that. Shadow resolution, this is going to be a big one if you're getting some frame hits, if you tried running this maxed out, because it goes up to 8K, which is pretty much means 8K textures, or 8K shadows, I should say, so definitely going to be demanding if you try to run that. I found the best setting for me was 4096, right in the middle. It goes down to 2048, so I'm sitting right in the middle, and like I said, the settings I'm using, not dropping a frame for me, running a solid 60. Character shadows, dynamic object shadow quality, character shadow quality, depth of field. This I have down. This, unfortunately, you can't turn off completely. I don't really like depth of field in a lot of games, and unfortunately you couldn't turn this completely off. It just has medium and high, no off. That was a little bit odd to me that they didn't allow you to turn that off completely. Down here we've got God rays quality, radial blur quality, screen space reflections, subsurface scattering, haze flare, and finally ambient occlusion to round it all off, which I've got everything cranked up as high as it will go. But like I said, depth of field, I would turn that off if it gave me the option to, but unfortunately medium is the lowest it'll go, and then these ones that are sitting on high, that's just the highest that they go. So that's pretty much going to wrap it up for the options menu. So let's go ahead now and jump back into the gameplay and talk about all that. Alright, so we got to look at the options menu there, which is not much changed at all, pretty much since the New Order came out, from what I can remember anyway. Got a detailed list of video options in there for advanced graphics tweaking, so you can get in there if you do have a lower spec system and turn some of these settings down to be able to run the game at 60 FPS. It is running at 60 frames on the PS4 and Xbox One after all, so if you are having any trouble at all with performance, you can just go ahead and tweak some of those more taxing options like the shadow resolution and the texture caching and things like that. You could turn that kind of stuff down, and you shouldn't be affected too much by how the game looks, and it's going to run a lot better for it if you do have a lower spec system, especially if you have low video memory, because this game was using up around like 3,500 megabytes of video memory for me at 1440p. If I remember the previous title correctly, I had to lower some options when I was playing on my 780 to get it to run under 3 gigabytes, because otherwise it was maxing out my video memory. So if you have less video memory, you're definitely going to have to tweak back some of these options, and because of the fact that it doesn't support SLI on the id Tech 5 engine, that's going to be, you know, a limitation for some people there also. If you do have an older system that's running in like SLI or Crossfire, since the game's not going to be supporting it, but if you're running like a 970, 980, 4 gigabyte 960, or like, you know, 780 in that area, you're going to be fine running this game with a couple of settings turned down, but nothing too major. I have to say, overall, I am very pleased with the look of the Old Blood. It looks damn near identical to the New Order. They didn't skip on any of the environments. All the environments look really fleshed out and well detailed. Some of the textures on certain objects aren't as good as I would like to see them. Maybe like I would love to see like a texture mod for this game to give it some really, really nice looking textures. But you know, some of the textures not great, but other ones are fantastic. So, you know, it's kind of a give and take there. But that was the case with the New Order as well. So I don't feel like there was any real difference there into how the games looked or performed. They both performed pretty much identically. So if you played the New Order before, then you are not going to be any stranger to how the combat is going to play out in this game. There's a good mix of stealth and action-oriented run-and-gun combat. You can go between the two seamlessly as you wish. So you can come into certain areas where there'll be like a commander that you can take out, and if you take him out, then he won't be able to call in reinforcements. So if you go at it the stealthy way and take him out first, then you're going to have an easier go at it. But if you want, you could also just charge straight in and just shoot everyone in the face with dual-wielded machine guns or dual-wielded shotguns. You know, your personal preference, whatever you want to do, you could play it the way you want to play it. The only exclusion for that was in the first chapter, which was pretty much an all-stealth mission, as you didn't have any weapons on hand, which was basically the limitation there. So it fit into the story and how they worked it in a natural way. So the first chapter there was a little bit slow going because it was really stealthy, but right after that, as soon as you get your first weapon, you get like 5 others. So you're not going to be limited by your weapons at all beyond the first chapter. You're just going to have tons and tons of weapons. It uses the fucking full row of num keys. I mean, you're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you know you're playing like a good old school style shooter when you're using the full numpad to get through all of your weapons. I love to see that. It reminds me of playing games back in the day where they didn't restrict you to having like, oh, just your primary and a pistol. Like, no, you have like dual-wielded shotguns and dual-wielded assault rifles and a grenade launcher and a double-barrel shotgun and pistols and a knife and a rusty pipe. I mean, you've got everything. You've got everything just in your back pocket. It's totally unfeasible, and it doesn't make sense at all, but that's okay because the game is fucking fun. You run around, you shoot Nazis in the face, and it looks awesome. The animations when the Nazis are like ragdolling across the screen look incredible when you're just spraying them in the face and blood splattering everywhere. It's really, really gory when you get like headshots and things like that. So it's just a lot of fun, and it really just throws it back to the old days of shooters where that's pretty much all you had to really go on was gameplay, because you couldn't really develop that much of an in-depth story and have amazing characters back then when it was just, you know, just pixels, basically. I mean, it still just is pixels, essentially, but a lot less pixels back then. So it was a little bit harder to tell a story. I'm not saying you couldn't, but it was harder, and most people just wanted to get in there and shoot stuff in the face. So this game, it has a good balance of that. You could shoot a lot of shit in the face, and you get a little bit of story to go along with it. I would say the story in this is not as in-depth depth as in the New Order. They definitely had more story and more character development in the New Order, but the Old Blood does have some decent characters that you start to meet in like the second part of the game, like with Helga von Schops, who's like the main bad guy. She's like this female officer who's hell-bent on like world destruction, and she's trying to find like the thing from Raiders of the Lost Ark or something like that. It's very much Raiders of the Lost Arky in the second act. You get there and there's like they're doing like a dig at a site and some shit goes down, and then all of a sudden like Nazi zombies start popping up. I kid you not, just like Nazi zombies start popping up because of some type of infection from this dig site where they're trying to dig up this supernatural thing, which fits into, you know, old school Wolfenstein totally. I mean, that's supernatural has always been somewhat of an element in the Wolfenstein universe, so it fits in all perfectly with all of that, and I like seeing them go in that direction and sort of resurrecting the, no pun intended, resurrecting the whole Nazi zombie thing, which I felt has been lacking for me since like Call of Duty World at War. That was like the best iteration of zombies, or Nazi zombies for that matter, for me personally. So I welcome that with open arms, and I like seeing the Nazi zombies having a little bit of a pop appearance in this game. Even so much as when you start fighting regular soldiers after them, then when they die, they turn into Nazi zombies, so you got to kill them twice. And that was just a really nice twist to go into the last two chapters, and I really enjoyed that aspect of the gameplay. Wolfenstein also doesn't disappoint on the end of the game. No spoilers here, but, you know, there's a nice big final boss fight, which I feel like we don't see too much in games anymore. That's kind of a shame. You know, big final boss fights where, you know, you're fighting like just like a massive enemy that, you know, has like certain weak points and stuff. That element just seems to sort of be gone in a lot of games. I think Arkham Origins actually did that fairly well, but that's getting a little off topic. But I liked seeing the final boss fight in this. It was a good final boss fight. It was challenging on the difficulty that I was playing on, which was next to the hardest difficulty. So it's going to be interesting to see how it is on the hardest difficulty when I go back and see how much I get my ass raped then. The Old Blood also picked up right where the New Order left off in terms of its sound design. The guns sound really, really great and just gritty and not like realistic. It doesn't sound like they didn't go to like a gun range with like MP40s and record sound effects. The guns just sound awesome. They sound varied. Each gun definitely sounds different, and I loved all of the sound effects in there. There was even like there was definitely a few Wilhelm yells that I heard in there as well. There's definitely a few Wilhelms going on in the background at times. Soundtrack, not as good as the New Order. Again, you know, this is one of those areas they kind of had to skimp back on, not being able to have as many licensed tracks as they had in the New Order. But that's to understand with a $20 standalone, so you can't really blame them too much for that, because you're still getting a good 6 to 8 hour campaign that is a lot of fun. It's got a decent story for, you know, for the $20, but, you know, not as vast of a story as the New Order and as interesting of characters, but you're getting your money's worth at $20. If you haven't played the New Order, you could play that first if you want, or you could play this first. It's up to you. Like I said, the New Order is cheaper on G2A. You can pick it up for $13, where this is around $19 to $20 on G2A, or it's just $20 flat out if you go on Steam. So if you want to go pick it up, it's available now on the PC, PS4, and Xbox One. I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, stick a like on it below, because it does help me out a lot. And even though I usually refrain from giving games a review score, I couldn't help myself with this one, because I'm going to give this game 9 nines out of 10. 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9. I give it 9 nines out of 10. That's right, 9 nines out of 10 would play again on Uber. So don't forget to stick a thumb up on this video below. I'll catch you slunts next time. Cheer up!